Good morning, wherever you are watching this broadcast from. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your company this particular morning as we kickstart News Check on the 25th day of August 2020, a day when we are going to be exploring quite a number of issues that have been shaping the news over the weekend and even a better part of last week, and what is to come this particular week. Of course, there is quite a number of activities that are happening in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, and other parts of the country. I will be letting you in on some of them in a bit. But today, what forms the basis of our conversation, and I want you to be part of this conversation throughout, beginning right now all the way till around 12 noon, we are going to be talking about the Constitution at 10 years. We know that this coming Thursday, the 27th of August 2020, we are marking 10 years since we promulgated the 2010 Constitution. And I wouldn't say it's a coincidence or it's just something that has just happened, depending on how you look at it. It's coming at a time when we are all having a conversation about a new constitution. You remember the BBI push and the referendum talks that are currently ongoing in the country. So what is it that is actually going on in the country? And probably we can also take time to look at the 2010 Constitution and explore some of the hits and the misses. That conversation is coming right up, but I want you to have an opportunity to understand what is happening in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, and other parts of the country, and this is actually contained in our reporter's diary. All right, so around this time 10 years ago, actually, we were getting into a climax in Kenya's history, and one of the biggest events was just about to happen. That is the promulgation of the 2010 Constitution that contained so many issues that Kenyans hoped that would be a solution to some of the issues that were ailing the country then. And of course, if you look at this document, it contains a provision on the direction that we ought to have taken as a country in terms of addressing some of those key issues that were ailing the country 10 years ago. Right now, we are sort of at the same point, having a talk on whether we should have a new constitution, whether we should go the referendum way or not, which ways to explore, what are some of the issues that should inform the new constitution. These are questions that people are asking themselves at this particular juncture when we are having the BBI push. So we want to go back down memory lane and just explore history a little bit when it comes to matters constitution and look at the 2010 Constitution, look at whether it has worked for us or whether it has not, or whether we are the ones who have failed to actually utilize the opportunities that it provided or not. So these are some of the questions that I will be asking my panel this morning, and it's a panel of two gentlemen. Allow me just introduce them. I'm having Honorable Charles Nguna. He is the Member of Parliament, Mwingi West constituency, and of course, he's also a member of the Committee on Implementation. Thank you so much, Mheshimiwa, for creating time for us.
Thank you.
All right, and we're also from the far left there, I'm having Honorable John Mutunga, Member of Parliament, Tigania West. He's also a member of the Budget and Appropriations Committee at the National Assembly. Thank you so much for creating time for us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, so it's good that we are having you this morning. It's just a few, I would say, hours or just, say, one day before we actually mark the 10th anniversary of the 2010 Constitution. A lot has happened, a lot has been said, a lot has not been said as well. So I want us to just explore this particular document and look at, climax this conversation at a point where we'll be exploring whether we need a new one or not, because we are having this conversation when we are just, you know, at a point in this particular country when there are talks to have a new constitution. So is it really necessary? But then let us go back to what ought to have happened. And I want us to start this conversation with, you know, way back. And this I'd like to, you know, just probe you on, Honorable Mutunga. If you look at 2010, and the reason we all came together, and it was what some have termed as the most participatory process Kenya has ever had in history. What is it that you feel were some of the issues that we were going through during those times that maybe prompted or necessitated a need for us to have the 2010 Constitution?
Come 2010, or just before 2010, Kenyans had gone through a process of trying to deal with the experiences of the day. We needed a constitution that would keep us together as a country, a constitution that would address the issues that affected Kenyans, a constitution that would also open up better relationships with other countries in the world, the constitution that would reach especially the common man effectively. And that is why it took us quite a bit of time to come up with that constitution, until at a certain point Kenyans were feeling a little bit tired of the repeat processes of coming up with drafts. There were very many drafts. And finally we agreed on a draft which, as they say, was not 100% perfect, but it was quite acceptable to most of the Kenyans. And this is what has been implemented since. So before the day, 27th of August 2010, people were very anticipatory, they were very anxious, they really wanted to see this change. It was a historic moment. And when we received the Constitution, Kenyans were, they breathed a sigh of relief that at least the process, the rigorous process of coming up with a document that would take care of our issues. And the document, if we look at the Kenyan Constitution, it has many provisions that really focus on the people. First of all, the opening statement, we the people, give ourselves this particular document to be the guidelines that will lead us and keep us together even as we move on as a country. Then several institutions were put in place to realize the implementation of the Constitution. Let me say that the 10th Parliament realized the Constitution and set up the institutions. But then these institutions worked like the Committee on Implementation of a Constitution, which designed the entire architecture of the Constitution based on the provisions. The institutions that had been created within the Constitution, the way they are going to interrelate and so on. And so they did that. And then the committee that was led by Kinduri Wamongi, the Transitional Authority, which basically now gave the software, interpreted, it did identify the task or the functions and unbundled these functions as it were, and then decided what is supposed to be implemented at the national level and what is supposed to be implemented at the devolved level, and created adequate awareness on what is supposed to be done. So the first government after the Constitution, which is now the 11th government, did a little bit of implementation. They did the setting up of the infrastructure, the layout of the 48 governments. We have the national government and for 7 county governments, the devolved units, and then also, design rather effecting the constitutional provision for giving them money, the 15%, and so on. There are so many provisions within the Constitution that were interpreted, and these provisions that were interpreted by CIC were actually effected in the 11th Parliament. All
right, we'll get into the nitty-gritties on the implementation and whether we have made progress in terms of the implementation of the 2010 Constitution later. But I'd also like just to engage you, Honorable Nguna. What is it about the 2010 Constitution that you term as a highlight? What really stood out for you and was like a breath of fresh air for Kenya from a Kenyan's perspective?
Let me begin by saying congratulations to our 4th president, 3rd president actually, Mwai Kibaki, for coming up with that constitution. I think one of the key issues which were highlighted actually, the constitution obliged the state to ensure there is equitable and also sustainable utilization of natural resources, which are supposed to be shared equally. And I think some of those key issues which were highlighted in that constitution, if at all it is totally implemented in the right way, I believe it will achieve more than what we are witnessing currently. On issues of which government is supposed to implement which, I think it was not clear. Some of our people actually need education on what the county government is supposed to do, what the national government is supposed to do, and there's a lot of confusion when it comes to issues of implementing some of these mandates. And you will find an example if you walk into any village in Muranga or any village in Mwingi West and ask people who is supposed to be responsible for water implementation projects. Definitely, majority of the people will not be knowing which government is right to implement this. You will find some people, if you walk into their places, who is in charge of environment, especially environment, which is very quite well highlighted in the whole constitution. Who is responsible for that? Some of you will say it's national government, others will be saying county government. So I think there's a lot of confusion with Kenyans, and if there's a moment actually we stole the limelight in the world, it was promulgation of the constitution, the 2010 constitution. And if at all we are going to have more emphasis on reading the document itself, I think even we don't need a new constitution to progress as a country. But there are some few things.
Yeah, but it's a critical question to ask, you know, before we even marshal ourselves and lobby for a new constitution. Let's look at the 2010 one and see whether we've done justice, whether we've implemented it to the maximum as it was expected. But then I'd take you back to the question I asked you. If you interact with the document, or even just looking at what has happened in the country over 10 years, what is it about the 2010 constitution that you hold as a gem, as a Kenyan? Something that even as in case we are moving into the new era of a new constitution, this is something we shouldn't let go of. What stands out?
I would say one of the most highlighted factors of this new constitution was devolution. That is definitely a big plus for this country. Things which actually they were actualized on the ground than at national level. I think this is a big plus and it's a victory to Kenyans. Although devolution has been witnessed as a success in some of the regions in the country, depending on how the governors and senators are good and MCAs good at implementing it. There are some counties which are really doing very well in terms of devolution. I've seen Ragin, especially in Ukambani, Makueni, Machakos. I've seen devolution being done very well in Meru County. Some of these high-ranking governors and counties which have really implemented devolution very well. But for the moment, let me say that we are yet actually to witness the real benefits when it comes to issues of implementing the constitution. One of the other issues which actually focused on this implementation of the new constitution was the sharing of the resources, resource sharing. There are some counties and even villages which used to be marginalized, and right now they can actually identify something which comes from the government. So I think the issues of devolution, marginalization was really addressed when it came to implementation of this new constitution. Okay. But still we have got a long way. Devolution was a success. Marginalization, is it a success? It's really a success because some of the villages we have in this country, they never even used to get anything when the resources were being shared at national level. But since the devolution came, we have seen a lot of progress in these marginalized areas. Especially if you go to Marsabit, you go to Kitui County, which was of course marginalized before we got our constitution, before we got devolution. You will find even some of the deep villages you can think of. At least they
have a taste of the piece of the national cake.
Yeah, and that is why I'm emphasizing we should devolve more functions to the counties, and also resources should be taken to the county. What we are getting, 15%, is still very low compared to what national government is getting. And I think if we go to the right direction, devolution can be a success.
All right.
But it will depend on which governor the Wananchi are going to elect.
I like the fact that you've taken an about turn and said can be a success.
Yes.
It is not a success.
Can be.
But Mheshimiwa Mutunga, from where you sit, now that you've taken me to the devolution, I wanted us to explore that later, but I want us now to just focus on it now that the conversation has already started about devolution. It's years down the line. Usually at this point, if it was a baby, you would begin looking at this child and trying to find out whether they are really growing at par as to the expectation. If you look at this baby devolution, would you say that they are growing well? Do you say that all the issues that devolution ought to have addressed have been addressed years down the line?
I cannot say that all the issues have been addressed. I can only say that quite a number of issues have been addressed. And devolution is a good idea because it removes the center of focus from the national level to the county level, let me say. Because problems are very local, and even solutions are local. So when we engage the people into solving the problems that they have, we are able to focus a lot more on the solutions that are effective. So at the very local level, if you look at what is happening in Kenya today, if you drive around the country, you see quite a number of changes. We used to have very dusty, shopping centers and urban centers. And today they are turning out to be paved. The environment is becoming cleaner. We are seeing a lot more of a focus on certain areas that are key to this country, like focus on agriculture, although it has not been given sufficient support. We have also seen those counties that have moved faster than the others, as he has intimated, achieves quite a bit of results that will be results that will go by. We've seen conventions that are focused a lot more on questioning the extent to which we are looking at our issues. The devolution conferences, they normally look at what have we done over the last maybe interim period, 1 year or so, and so on. They give us scorecard, and then they look at what is happening where and how scalable is it, how can we borrow from what is happening in other places. But we don't see a lot of them borrowing. We see a lot of indigenization of thought process and focus on the local issues. And I think the other thing that has become very apparent is the establishment or rather realization of development blocks, where we have several counties coming together and creating an economic block. And these economic blocks, if looked at and rationally interpreted, I think would give us some growth opportunity that was not there before. What I would probably have liked to see, and I have not seen in devolution, is a focus on the ecological fitness and interpretation of how the ecology could be effectively utilized. We have not really done that, and I come from the background of agriculture, and if I take a little bit of 1 minute to say exactly what I mean, is that if you look at the other countries that grew before us, you look at the Americas, you look at Europe and so on, they identified what they had as natural resources. They looked at the ecologies and they defined the ecologies in terms of the potential. They give the ecological grounding the best potential application that they could. And therefore, they produced, focused on production based on the potentiality of the area, provided the amenities that are required for production to be achieved at optimal levels, and then collocated this production with industries that will transform the products at primary level and created jobs. We haven't done that.
So in a particular region, it was custom made to meet the needs of
those people. And it is being interpreted even in other countries right now, which do not even have devolution. That is somewhere we are missing the point.
And I like us to explore more on what we have missed so that it informs how we move forward. I'm coming back to you. Just hold that thought. Okay. I'm coming back to you on that.
I just wanted to say what I think came up from the Constitution, not there, which was not very clear.
All right.
First of all,
we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in a bit. Just allow me to do this for our viewers. We are tracking some of the events that are happening in different parts of the country. And right now, I want us to follow up on an event that is currently underway. The Dock Workers Union is currently having a press conference concerning the merger of KPA, Kenya Pipeline, and the Kenya Railways Corporations in Mombasa. Let's just go there and listen into what is currently happening. Simon Sang, the Dock Workers Union Secretary General, is currently speaking. Let's listen in.
The public participation, which is as is provided for in the constitution of this country. So they cannot just wake up one day, go to a boardroom, come up with a decision, give a gazette notice, and say we have done a consolidation. It can't work like that, because if the three companies were established through an act of parliament, it is the same act of parliament and a process of parliamentary process which must undo what was already there. If it's a question of consolidation, we have no problem, but it has to be done, through a process that is open, that is parliamentary, that is as per the constitution of this country.
My question is the matter is these companies which take over the running of the port, and already the one that is the deed that was done previously by the government through MCC. Yes. So I'm just asking Kwamba, if these three entities come in and they set up operations that have been tried to come in, how mimi mewajidi kusema kwamba they will take over the operations of the port, or there will be some privatization of their kind so that they can benefit from the port. Mimi sense.
What we have sent is the process of appointing managing director of Kenya Ports Authority has been stopped. That is what gave us a hint that they want to collapse the three organizations and be run by one MD. If the process of KPA MD was going on, we would not have seen anything sinister. But since, again, number two, if this collapsing did not go through a parliamentary process, it means nobody knows how it's going to operate. Even the members of parliament are not aware. Even some of the officials of the ministry are not aware. It's only the minister who is aware, and probably a few others. Then are we going to run this country through a boardroom kind of decision? We can't do that. We cannot afford to do that. Anything that is public must go through a public process, because the constitution of this country has that very clear provision.
So that is currently underway. It is actually an update concerning the merger of KPA, Kenya Pipeline, and Kenya Railways corporations, and we'll be getting a clear picture on what's the way forward with regards to this merger. We have our reporter Junaika Risa, who is following up on this particular issue for us from the coastal region. So we make sure that we give you that information as soon as we receive it. Now we want to take you to another function that is also underway, and this has to do with the leadership forum this particular morning, and we just want to take you straight to follow up on some of the issues that are emerging from this leadership retreat that is currently happening at I will just let you know about Ole Sereni right here in Nairobi. Let's just go there and listen into some of the issues that are coming up from this leadership forum.
The new responsibilities. One of the reasons why we're actually having this meeting is to bring them on board so that they are part and parcel of the institution, and also sensitize them on the challenges to face as chairs and vice chairs. As I conclude, Mr. Speaker, on my own behalf and my staff, I wish to thank you and your leadership for giving us the necessary support. For the Parliamentary Service Commission, and the commissioners are here, the Speaker will introduce them, who care for your welfare. There are a number of things we don't say, but in our meetings and wherever we are, the commissioners and the commission has said members must be facilitated in all ways in order for the members to achieve the mandate of the House and work seamlessly. And I can tell you the commission is active. Of course, we are asking the chair of parliamentary budget of committee to have and look at the interest and consider the issues from the commission in order to continue facilitating members of parliament. May I take this opportunity, therefore, to introduce, we start with the let me start with the Director General of Parliamentary Joint Services, Mr. Clement Nyandere. We have shared facilities in Parliament, and so that we have here in the middle, is a person in the middle, and he deals with most of the work we need to, so that they leave clerks and the houses to discharge their mandate. Welcome, Mr. Clement Nyandere. Welcome, and because of the National Assembly input, we have now 3 accounting officers, one for the Senate, one for the National Assembly, and then one for the joint services. So his hands are free, he needs to work and attend to the member services. And I have no doubt that Mr. Clement Nyandere will be able to do it along with his officers. And then we have got Board of Management of the National Assembly that deals with issues of members and staff. May I ask them to stand up? I will start with my deputies. First is Mr. Jeremiah Ndombi. He's a legal officer by profession. He's one of the deputy clerks. Followed by Sarah Kioko. Sarah Kioko is a deputy clerk as well. Then next is Florence Abonyo, the director of committees. Next is Macau. Mrs. Macau, Phyllis, is the director of budget. The other house do not know the importance of budget making until now, you know. They have taken 1 year and you can now, Macau now is a very useful person everywhere. I can tell you that. Next is Anne Njoroge. Anne Njoroge is the Hansard editor. When you have issues of record of the house and all that. Mr. Lekula is the chief surgeon at arms.
All right, so that is the Clerk of the National Assembly, Michael Sialai, currently just giving his opening remarks at the 3rd National Assembly Leadership Retreat happening at the Ole Sereni Hotel right here in Nairobi. The theme for this particular forum actually is safeguarding the welfare of the society amidst the pandemic's new normal. Quite a number of issues are going to be shaping this forum, which include even just addressing the issue of effectively leading elected officials in a political environment. And also what is standing out is that they're going to be discussing how to achieve business continuity amidst the pandemic, that is the coronavirus. We'll be going back later to that particular forum when the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Justin Muturi, will be speaking, among other guests who are there, including the Deputy Speaker, Honorable Moses Cheboi, and of course, Honorable Amos Kimunya, Honorable John Mbadi, the Leader of Minority, and of course, Honorable Naomi Shaban and Michael Sialai. These are just among the convening members who have just brought together quite a number of leaders at this particular forum to discuss issues that affect the nation at this particular time when we are facing the coronavirus pandemic. And also what they are going to be talking about later on in the afternoon is issues to do with the implementation of the Constitution. Actually, this is tomorrow. This is a 2-day forum that is happening beginning today and tomorrow at the Ole Sereni Hotel right here in Nairobi. We will make sure that all the issues that come forth, we update you when we receive news from that end. Now we want to continue with our conversation in a studio, and it's 10 years since the promulgation of the Constitution, and what we are doing this morning together with Honorable John Mutunga, the Member of Parliament at Tigania West, and Honorable Charles Nguna, the Member of Parliament for Mwingi West, is that we're just looking at how well we've done when it comes to the implementation of this particular document, and just some of the gaps that needs to be filled, even as we having a conversation on whether we need a new constitution or not. And gentlemen, before we went to that link, we were just hearing from you, Mheshimiwa Mutunga, on, you gave a very beautiful example on what has worked elsewhere in terms of devolution, and it sort of like tapped on the potential of every region and created employment at the local level and ensured that the people, the residents of each and every region benefited from their own resources and their own potential. I'd like you to continue just from that perspective and also talk to us about the 2 issues that you were just about to underscore before we took our viewers to Ole Sereni.
Yeah, thank you very much, Serfine. What I was saying is that if we were to see the effectiveness of devolution, it would come from regional giantism development. We see a regional giant in a certain area of specialization. And unless you identify what you are good in, you cannot specialize. Even in academics, you cannot specialize unless you identify a good topic. So what other countries did, and they grew very fast, is that first of all, they believed, which our constitution has done, that everyone is useful. Secondly, they believed that they have potential, natural potential, that would drive their development. And this natural potential was organized in a way that it was optimized, maximized in terms of production and productivity. And therefore, this natural potential was co-located with industrialization. What I'm trying to say is that for instance, if an area is good in mining, like we have in Zambia, they have a lot of copper. I don't know how much copper we have, I don't know what. We identify the mining area and then co-locate with an industry that does the mining, purification of the mineral. Now, when it comes to agriculture, which I think is the main support of this economy, we have not done our agriculture the way actually we should do. What we should have done, and what I think we should still do, because there is opportunity, is identify what is the potential for every part of this country. Somebody called White has written on what he called core centers of endemism, meaning the areas that you can explore this potential and maximize. And we have rarely focused on that. If you look at the current agricultural growth and transformation strategy, the agricultural sector growth and transformation strategy, it goes towards that, identifying what is good in an area, clustering the people in that particular area into thousands, and then producing for a known factory. If we did that, we would create so many jobs because we would have sufficient levels of raw materials. Right now, if you ask me what is best, what can be best done where, it's a scatter process. Secondly, we have not used our human resource. And unless you have greater proportion of the human resource working and yielding results, can you grow an economy? You can't grow an economy from a few people, because a few people, the greater majority of the people cannot depend on few. In fact, it is the many, the few should depend on the many. So if we made our people useful by looking at what is it that they are engaged in, and then go deep to identify, in this particular county, which area can we do what best? And then focus those people on sharpening their engine to optimizing what they have, and then collocate this with an industry to process what we are producing, would create a sufficient number of jobs, in fact more than probably we even need. Right now the economy is not expanding fast enough because we've not done that.
All right.
And
I like what you're sharing with us, because it's all about seeking a way forward on how best to move from here.
And we have those opportunities.
We have those opportunities.
Yes.
But then
we're just watching and waiting.
for who and for when?
I
All right.
don't know.
Mheshimiwa Nguna, would you say that we have concentrated more on some regions and forgotten others? Because even as he was giving us that example, he talked about agriculture. And the other day, we were talking about this revenue allocation formula, the controversial revenue allocation formula. And one of the issues that came forth from that conversation was the fact that in this country, we define wealth based on certain regions being producers because they're agricultural regions, and forget the fact that there are regions that may not necessarily be strong when it comes to agriculture, but they are very, very rich in terms of other resources. Do you think maybe the problem could be that we have focused more on certain areas and certain resources and, you know, left others behind?
Let me say that since the colonial period, actually, the country has focused really on agricultural activities more than exploitation of available resources. I'll look at the county where I come from, which is Kitui County.
What do you pride yourself in?
Recently, actually, I would like to say the members of parliament and the governor, we convened a conference in one of the facilities in the Nairobi, and we thought that Kitui County has a potential of minerals which are worth more than 3 trillion shillings if properly exploited. Wow. Leave alone the coal. There are other minerals like copper, which is in Kitui West. There is a lot of limestone in every county, actually Machakos, Makueni, and Kitui. Even the Mwingi West constituency where I come from, there's a potential of limestone there. A lot of resources remained unexploited by the government, actually. And some of the other issues, actually, the sand. How do we use sand? It is one of the contentious issues we have in the country. Like recently, I clashed with the county government on issues of sand harvesting, which actually can change the fortune of the people around the area. So I think we have concentrated much on agricultural activity, and other areas have remained unexploited. Look at Turkana County, which has got potential of actually providing sufficient water to this country. And the area is still very marginalized in terms of access to clean water. The area can also produce oil, which was actually, we have invested a lot in oil production, but we've not really, Kenyans have not been explained how the oil production has really been carried out in Turkana. And I'm not talking only Turkana. This applies to all other counties which have got potential. But then a county like Kiambu, which is actually supposed to be giving us enough coffee, and also where we pride ourselves as biggest producers of tea and coffee, has now neglected this agricultural activity and moved to other issues of housing and other things. So I'm telling you,
Could it be
we
because
are
of
not
dwindling
very
income,
good.
or
We are not
what is
very
it
good
that
at
might have
actually
inspired this
focusing
shift?
here.
Because what you raise is very fundamental. A lot of
Yes.
farmers are now shifting to other.
Yes.
We are looking at land as a source of income, and not as a factor of production, as a resource that you can utilize for very many years. If you talk to an economist, they will tell you the value of land to them is how much money you can accrue from that land for that particular period, that particular point in time. But if you look at strategic thinking, you'd look at land 100 years to come. Now, if you look at country, let me give an example of Canada. What Canada did initially, they said, this is commercial, this is residential, this is agricultural. The principles of acquisition of agricultural land are totally different. The prices are different. So it's not really commercialized. The land is not commercial. It's not a commodity for sale. It's a commodity for use for the future generation.
You cannot use an agricultural land for residential.
Yeah.
Yes. So you zone out and you cannot do anything else on agricultural land. You can only do agriculture.
Yes.
So you go there and define what is the potential crop here or potential livestock product that is supposed to be produced in this area. That is what you produce. So you buy land to do that. That's what Europe has done. That's what America did. That's what Australia has done. That's what India has done recently. Vietnam is doing that. This other one, Malaysia, where we like going to see.
Actually,
that's what they have done.
Actually, just to emphasize what Honorable Mutuga said is, if you go to Germany, which is a very developed economy, you will find wheat farmers growing wheat in specific areas.
Yes.
And there's nothing else you can do there.
Only
But here in Kenya, you will go to Kiambu, they are producing coffee, tea.
Everything.
Then the next thing, everything. You will change from coffee to cotton. You will change from coffee
There's
to
no specialization.
banana. There's no specialization.
There isn't.
But if we could actually classify our lands, like Kitui is one of the best places to produce cotton. But the industry has been neglected. Look at Kiambu, where we have got a very good soil, volcanic soil for coffee and tea. It has not been controlled by the government.
But if
you
we
can
know all
come up
this,
with anything.
if you're sharing with me all this and your leaders in those regions, then why are we not seeming to be benefiting from some of this potential? What is it that we need to do right so that we get to that beautiful vision that you're sharing with us this morning? What is it that needs to happen?
We need a
to
conversation as
Kenya?
Kenyans, and we need to ask ourselves what is good for us as a country. We need to look at everything in the perspective of our country. We don't need to, let's look at a farmer out there. A farmer in the village produces for themselves, does not produce for the market. Sways with the changes in the market value of the product that they're producing, and changes, makes decision based on that. So we need to start from the market and advise our people. And then we don't fail. We may not give what is called minimum guaranteed prices, or the GMR, guaranteed minimum returns. We may not give that, but let's have a surety of off-takership. You see, you have aggregated these farmers, but then you have also put together off-takers. People will not fail them. They'll pick from them whatever they have produced. But what have we done? We have left them out there to struggle, make a decision what to do, and do it. So first of all, they believe they must feed their own people. So you produce food for yourself. The next thing is you take whatever it is to the market. What happens? During the harvest season, they all meet at the marketplace at the same time. And then what do? They depress the prices to such levels that they don't meet the cost of production. So they become impoverished forever and ever. It's a vicious cycle of impoverization. That's what is happening everywhere. So we have a government that need to think.
Yes.
Sit and say, this is what we are going to do here, and what you produce here, we shall take it here, and it will be remunerative. You get remunerative prices. We don't do that. So we allow everybody to decide and do whatever it is. All we need is money. The other day I said, the issue is not money. We actually don't need, it's not the money we need. We need good plans, we need good strategies that will utilize what we have to make sure that we amplify the productivity.
All right.
And also to add on what my colleague has said, really, what we need is to stop corruption in this country. we
That's,
end up
that's another
I don't know why
monster.
we need
we
money
end up
always.
we end up
We need money so that
allocating
they can plan to
we,
get it out.
we end up allocating a lot of resources.
Yeah.
Look at example the agricultural activity. We allocated a lot of money to subsidize farmers, especially in maize production. And we ended up actually money being used and nobody accounted for it. The Committee for Agriculture tried to sort out these issues. We followed, but nothing. Actually, we write so many reports on corruption and other things, but we don't end up implementing them fully. So we need to stop corruption. If we say we are going to subsidize agricultural activities, let us be very clear. This amount is going to the cotton industry. This amount is going to maize production, beans production, coffee production, tea production. But once we consolidate all these funds and allocate them to the minister, to the CS in charge, he doesn't have time to account for everything. And you end up actually getting funding based on the political influence. Like the farmers in Meru, they have been agitating for Miraa to be subsidized. I know they got 1 billion shillings, but were it not for political influence, that money would have not reached the farmers
All right.
to help them.
As we are just about to move to the next part of this conversation, I'd like us to clearly point out what is it that we need to do as a country to harness the potential of every region. We have talked about agriculture, but that is not the only resource that we have as a country. There are so many beautiful resources that other areas also have. What is it that we need to do to harness the potential that every region offers, even as we talk about the success of devolution?
We need to remove the individual, detach the individual from land. For instance, because we are talking about land, if it's water, if it's minerals, if it's agricultural, you just need to detach the individual. We demystify the value of land. The moment we demystify the value of land, then we use land to produce raw materials for industry. That is the only way we can grow as a country. But as long as we know this is now Meru, it has got so much land, which is supposed to be, some is urban, others peri-urban, others, you know, all those classifications don't really assist anyone. If you look at countries that have sat down and decided to go in a direction that is productive, they have reorganized themselves based on the potentialities. And they are yielding maximum results, which we need to do. Because this country is a growing economy. It is a young nation. Young nation means the younger people are always more than the older people, which means the demands are increasing. The future is bleak. The way we are moving, the future is very bad. Right now, we don't see much future. The economy is not opening, the service industry is not opening very fast. Manufacturing sector has never exceeded 13% support to the economy. The ones that appear to work have not been supported sufficiently. For instance, agriculture that he has mentioned, it's not supported by the exchequer sufficiently to be able to, and also the ideas therein also need to be looked into. So it is a combination of very many things. We need to sit as Kenya and have, you know, sometimes we talk about Kenyanized conferences, Kenya Daima. But we are talking about Kenya Daima in terms of politics. The only thing that has succeeded and has really evolved and developed in this country is politics. Nothing else.
But has it really succeeded? That's also another question.
Let me say it has not succeeded in terms of looking at chapter 6 of the Constitution.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
don't think we have really succeeded enough.
Actually, to add on that, if you look at economies like Kibaki, what he tried to implement in the country, it's the issue of building infrastructure. I'll give you an example. In one of my village, which is actually Mwingi West, it's called Kakululo, we have got a very serious farmer there who is doing thousands of acres of land with, he's planting onions, cabbages, and all sorts of things you can think of, the cash crops. And that farmer has got no access to energy. If at all we are going to be serious as a country for us to maximize production and resource usage, we have to emphasize on the issues of electricity, which is a key thing for business. Number two, we have to emphasize the issues of building the road network in our country. And number three, which is almost critical in life, issues of water. if a country focuses on those three key issues, electricity, infrastructure, which is actually roads, good roads, and also water, we are going to achieve maximum utilization and distribution of these resources. So far, we have really not done very well when it comes to issues of connecting our people with energy, which is electricity, the main issue.
It's a
and
fact
I
of
think it's a
production.
fact of production. And also, the people, we have not really employed our people in the right way. There are so many idle people. I just saw recently kazi kwa vijana. This is not sustainable in the future. We need to engage these young guys in the up country on issues of exploiting the local resources, not just transferring them to Nairobi.
How would you rate the goodwill, the local goodwill, when the government, for instance, wants to invest or develop a particular region? The residents there, probably landowners who maybe are in possession of a piece of land that is very prime, and the government may want to invest and do something beautiful that will bring a change in that particular region. Do we have that kind of goodwill, that relationship that will really help that to be facilitated?
Serfine, governments are very powerful. Government can do anything. There are provisions of compulsory acquisition within the Constitution. If government decides this is really potential for these people here, and when we have a very good idea that we will benefit the majority of the people, they can acquire that land. Yeah.
But you know, in Kenya, I'd rather own, say, 20 acres that I'm not doing anything on than...
there are provisions for taxation of idle land, and I think they were not effected. They were not implemented. The reason being that the owners of idle land are the ones who are supposed to implement these laws. So that is the problem we have. I said we detach the individual from the resources so that we will be able to think about Kenya. We look at Kenyans, everyone is according to the Bill of Rights, everyone has the right to quality living, quality life. Everyone has the right to good environment, housing, all those rights are provided for very. But it's a beautiful document talking about great rights, which are not, there's no mechanism of delivering these rights to the individuals. So we should have moved a step further and ask us, how do we ensure, when you talk about every Kenyan, there should be no Kenyan living in polythene sheet structures. No, that's not, there's no right for such a Kenyan, because the right to habitation, the right to shelter should actually be provided for. There should be clear mechanisms of providing for that. Right now we have a huge program on housing. And where are these houses taking place? Does it mean that it's only in urban areas that you'll find people who do not have houses? Honestly, we need to look at this country.
But there's still a lot of mistrust when it comes to the relationship that these two, I would say, parties have. Because even in the past, you've seen projects like the SGR, projects that have been implemented by the government. There's still always that aftermath conversation of compensation. Yes, you promised us that if we move and issue this land for development, you're going to be compensated, but it still takes a lot of time. I don't know if this is something that probably you'd say has added salt onto the injury.
What I know about planning and implementation of projects is that a project has complete budget, and the budget takes care of everything. So because of the sickness that we suffer as Kenyans, then some things don't go right. And when things don't go right, people fail to receive their rightful, benefit, let me say, or to be paid off their worth from a process. But if things were conducted, when you do a planning and then you have a budget for that plan, the budget has even a provision for a certain percentage, miscellaneous. It should be able to deliver. But most of them do not, because there is an unbudgeted demand for those resources to the individual. So we need to detach individuals from the management of issues that we may be able to move on.
Yes. I would say, actually, to add on the issues of compensation, the issue of corruption still pops in. Recall the Standard Gauge Railway, where the Commission on Land actually overestimated compensation. A land which is supposed to cost like $1 million, they were giving it at 10 million shillings. who are you actually fooling as a country? We need to have proper guidelines on how, before we implement a project, who is going to be done and what value are we going to, and when, because compensation is supposed to be fair and prompt.
All right. We are coming back to continue with this particular conversation, but I wanted to just take you back to the leadership forum that is happening at Ole Sereni Hotel right here in Nairobi. Quite a number of leaders are, coming forth and just sharing what they have with regards to the running of the country. Let's just take you back there and listen into what is happening, and then we will continue this conversation.
Can you stand, please? The first chair is here. Honorable Soipan, Honorable Mulele there, Honorable Mariro the other side, and Honorable Jessica somewhere in here. Now, I will leave the commissioners, Mr. Speaker. You could recognize them when you get the opportunity. So let me take this opportunity to welcome the leader of majority party, Dr. Amos Kimunya, who ordinarily in the just last year, 1 year ago, he would be seated somewhere there at the back as a vice chair of education, but now seated deeply inside power, where he's more used to. Karibu, Dr. Kimunya.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, for that introduction. For people who wear specs, the mist from the mask can be a problem. So you allow me to remove the mask so I can see what I'm telling you. Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, the Honorable Justin Muturi, fellow leaders, I believe everyone has been named, so I would go through the list again. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege and honor to participate and address this Honorable Assembly of Leaders, the Third National Assembly Leadership Retreat, and as the Deputy Speaker reminded us, my first as the leader of the majority party. It feels different to sit next to the Speaker and not to have to appear from somewhere far. I'd like to reiterate my appreciation again from the outset, for the honor that was bestowed upon me to run this important office by our party leader of the Jubilee Coalition, His Excellency President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, and of course our fellow members of the party who endorsed his choice. I'm alive to the challenges that come with this office, particularly in these trying times, and I want to give you, as my fellow leaders, my assurance that I'll do my best, and I'm sure with your support, we shall deliver. We're here gathered as leaders on a leadership retreat to learn. And indeed, in the words of John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, one of his quips was that leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. As I've learned during my leadership classes, when I took a sabbatical between 2013 to 2017, courtesy of decisions by the people of Kibeperi, one of the things I've learned, and I want to share with you, is that none of us is greater than others. And similarly, none of us is lesser than the others. No one is better or worse than the others. We may know more in our areas of expertise, but others equally know more in theirs. And indeed, if you are to challenge everyone based on what they know or don't know, then you'll be calling a fish stupid because you'll be assessing it on its ability to climb a tree. Similarly, and I said this before, no committee is more important than others, or even lesser than others. The difference within our committees is the mandates that we are being given in the standing orders. So when we are all seated here, I know Honorable Junet and I shared this when we were reconstituting committees, and we had all those messages we were sharing when members were saying, I would like to be moved to a more lucrative committee. And we asked ourselves, which is this lucrative committee, which is less lucrative? And I'm still getting comments even now that we've shifted people to committees that are not important. And I just want to, because the chairs and vice chairs you're here, that every committee is as important as any other. And none of you should feel you're more important than the other, or that you are any lesser than the other, because from where we sit, it's all together. Then even within the committees, and I believe the introduction by the Deputy Speaker probably alludes to that, even within the committees, for you as a chair or vice chair, none of you is more important than the other. Indeed, none of you is more important than the members. You need a quorum of 4 members. Huh? Even if the chair and the vice chair appeared and the members didn't appear, there'll be no committee. And there'll be no business to be transacted. So we are equally important. I just want to emphasize some of these small bits and pieces, because it's a reality that we kind of ignore every time we are called to positions of leadership, and we assume that we are up there and everyone else is down there. And we lose on the potential synergy that could be created when we have harness our knowledge, our experience, and the different roles and different experience that we have for the greater public interest. Honorable Speaker, distinguished guests, this retreat offers an opportunity to set the agenda for the remainder of the 4th session, and indeed the first part of the 5th session of the 12th Parliament. The importance of a clear plan of action during this challenging period cannot be overemphasized. We believe having a definite plan of action will offer members of Parliament the necessary motivation to achieve their constitutional mandates, while acknowledging the fact that the unpredictability of the current circumstances can be disheartening even to the best of us. We would all wish to see the 349 members of Parliament participating in Parliament. Unfortunately, only half can participate at any one time. And it's not the best of situations. Even within committees, not all of you can participate because of limitations. The retreat program was with you. I don't want to go through that, and has been explained. And I do hope that by the time we've covered the breadth and width of the topics there, and the discussion that we'll be having here will be far much better to operate within these challenging times. Honorable Speaker, distinguished guests, allow me to briefly touch on some of the important aspects of parliamentary business in this prevailing circumstance.
Say all kind of things about you.
With them on, just shake up. Need to mush you and done to mush you. When your booty got show me now.
Baby, one time. Bouncy, baby, give me 2 times. Beautiful 180. Crazy.
Trago y ella la botella. Let's go. Ha. I needed some with some bop in it.
Mamacita, where you at? I've been trying to reach you.
Choro, 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 choro. Get the pago, get the party more, get the pago. Katoto shepu awe, ayawe, ayawe. Tekenya katoto, kamini tekenya, tekenya katoto.
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
I'm sorry for everything that's happening. You probably don't expect this from me, but I hate seeing you and Wangui going through this.
Are you set? Good. You have my confirmation. Kill them all.
Julia? Julia! 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 Julia!
Embakasi Utawala tuko locked. Ungem Autanyahururu Kasuku Massive.
Jeshi ya Nyeri, Coast Maua na Kuru wako locked mbaya.
Kigumo Ward na ambao wote wako ndani ya KBC Channel 1.
Akulaliki Wednesday bila the ref.
Mbotela Auta Idara Kitengela.
Kiambu County 33 Pipeline Meru anawakilisha.
Rongai Maboksa pale go down. Karatina Auta Mlolongo wana enjoy show. Lare Sub County Auta Githurai 45. Lanet Barracks tuko ndani yake. Okongo Auta Carnation Maragwa Seti Nairobi.
Thika wako locked mbaya sana.
Watu wangu wa Nakuru Ngwaro.
Auta Gilgil live kutoka Mazeras Bahati Massive.
Embo Thika Massive.
Siaya Shikambi Kakamega Bungoma County.
Kusia Boda Kisumu City. Malindi yote iko ndani ya the ref.
When I'm in Kenya, I tune in to the rave. Get your mind brave, focus, conscious.
Kenya,
East Africa.
Right.
Keep it locked.
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
Tell me. I will tell you the reason behind it. Because you wanted to prove your greatness to others. You wanted to show them that you could accomplish such a massive task alone.
You are misunderstanding me once again.
Yes.
Why are you looking at me?
I was simply observing that even after suffering hardship for 14 years of your life, you have not changed at all.
Welcome back and thank you so much for staying with us. This is News Check in case you're just joining us, a program that seeks to explore some of the issues that have been shaping the news and of course just help you have a deeper understanding of some of these issues. And we're also tracking events as they happen in Nairobi and other parts of the country. So in between the conversation, we take you to live events. And this particular morning, among some of the events that we are following for you is the third leadership forum by the National Assembly at Ole Sereni. Earlier, we took you there as they were opening this particular forum that is to take place today and tomorrow. And we'll also be taking you back to that particular forum when the Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin Muturi, will be addressing those who have attended this forum. We are also following up quite a number of events from the coastal region. We will be taking you to an event that is being hosted by the Kenya Ports Authority. Today they have acquired 30 terminal tractors. I will be telling you how this is going to go a long way in matters to do with business growth and port expansion. When we get a link from Mombasa, of course, we will also be exploring this particular event for you. Now, we want to continue with our conversation in studio, which is coming just a day before the 27th of August. This is actually 10 years since we promulgated the 2010 Constitution. And what you're doing here is just to look at how we've fared in terms of its implementation and the main issues that are standing out when it comes to the Constitution of Kenya 2010, and of course, how they have fared in terms of us even just implementing them. I'm hosting Honorable John Mutunga, Member of Parliament for Tigania West, and Honorable Charles Nguna. He is the MP for Mwingi West constituency. Thank you so much for continuing to stay with us. Now, before we went to that break, we were talking about the issue to do with devolution, and I want us to just sort of wind up on devolution and look at another aspect of the Constitution. And by winding up, let's focus on just the recent debate, the heated, emotive debate on the controversial revenue sharing formula that happened at the Senate. There was, I would say, 9 attempts to just for the senators to agree on the way forward on how this new formula should be implemented. And we saw 8 proposed amendments to the CRA formula brought to the floor of the House. The latest one is actually what I want us to look at how practical it is one by nominated Senator Petronila Were, who was seeking to have the original formula developed by the Commission on Revenue Allocation adopted as the third basis for sharing revenue among counties, that the status quo should actually remain. But the senator was proposing that the CRA formula kick in when equitable shareable revenue is raised to 348 billion. And of course, we just want to look at this particular proposal and how practical it is, because Ms. Were wants the current second basis formula retained in the sharing of 316.5 billion. This is actually what counties are currently receiving. But she further wants every county to get the exact amount of the money they received in the last financial year. But if the allocation is to be raised to 348 billion, she's actually giving 2 proposals. If the allocation is to be raised from 348 billion as opposed to 316 billion, then she's proposing that the criteria for sharing be based on population index, that is 45%, basic equal share to get 26%, poverty index 18%, land area 2%, fiscal effort 2%, and development factor 1%. But what many have criticized about this particular proposal, gentlemen, is how practical it is for us at this juncture to increase the allocation to counties from 316 to 348. The bill is already passed.
First of all, we are talking about this year's allocation being 316 billion, because that's the figure we had last year. This figure is not based on the probable revenue that we are likely to get at the end of the year in view of the COVID. It is going to, the revenue is a lot lower, so it should actually have been much lower. But because of the realization of the fact that there are plans that need to be implemented, and therefore we cannot tell the counties to go down in terms of their budget at this point in time, then the government decided to retain the 316. So 316 is way above what the counties should be getting if we followed the constitutional provision of 15%. That's the point number 1. Secondly, 348, an additional 32 billion means additional from nowhere. Already, our budget has a huge deficit, 1.2 trillion deficit. If that is a deficit in our budget right now, that's the hole that needs to be plugged for the budget, for this year's budget to run. Then adding more, is very unrealistic.
Is it practical?
So it's not practical at all. It's not practical. Again, I don't know whether she has said how much we should how this 32 billion should be shared to take care of the hiccups. Let me say, the hiccups are coming because people care. People, there is that disagreement within the Senate in terms of how to share the revenue because there is something wrong with that particular formula. So will it correct what is wrong in the formula and the provisions of the proportions and so on? I do not know the extent to which that may give us a solution.
It was sort of trying to solve the other counties losing, other counties gaining problem, because
Maybe
that was seemed to be the biggest problem at that particular juncture.
Actually, I just want to say, let us wake up to reality. 348 years is a big win for the counties. Where are we going to get the budget from? You'll be forcing us, actually, during this the time of COVID, to look at the issues of borrowing money again. Yet, we have low revenue collection. And actually, I am expecting the worst case scenario. We could be having 1.8 trillion kind of budget deficit, even not the 1.2 we are predicting at the moment.
That's one factor for this.
So whereas proposal is good, yes, but when the economy is stable and when we are operating at optimal level of revenue collection, so far I cannot see it working. Even if we want it to work, but it will not be practical.
One of the proposals, I'm sorry to jump onto this, but one of the proposals in the BBI process is to increase allocation to counties.
Yeah.
Do you think that is a direction we should be going forward, looking at what has happened at the county level?
That has a potential solution to the current stalemate, in the sense that it will provide resources which therefore should be shared using the proposed formula. Because if you use the old formula on this particular capital, the amount, irrespective of how much the amount is, there will be discontent. Because they will be looking at the per capita share of the devolved funds to the individuals in the villages. And that will still, there will still be huge discrepancies between different regions. So for us to be able to get to where we would like to be, we would probably like to say that as counties grow, if we move from maybe 15% to that 5%, this 20% here, if it is added through the BBI or constitutional changes, then this 20% should be looked at correcting that particular historical injustice. Because the is an historical injustice, because it was brought in at the point of sharing the revenues without realizing the fact that some of those counties actually affected have already been provided for in terms of equalization fund. So some counties feel denied, and it is no more. We are developing human beings. It is the people we are developing. It is not the regions.
But why is it that, just out of curiosity, why is it that this subject became so emotive, that it became so heated? What do you think could have, inspired us to be thinking about revenue allocation as such a heated subject?
It is because it has been postponed many times. It has always been postponed. We postpone it to another time. Let's look at it next time. Next time. Even now, the idea is to try and postpone it again. But the more we postpone, postponing a problem, we say that a right delayed is a right denied. So people feel very uncomfortable when these figures flash out. Because during the BBI conversation, that's when people realize, oh, okay, you mean somebody in Tana River gets 22,500 when somebody in Meru gets 5,000? You see that kind of discrepancy? We are saying we are developing human beings. We are not developing regions. Then there is the equalization. Let us make the equalization fund work. And then this equalization fund will cushion the speed at which we need to ventilate growth in some of those areas. We can push growth faster.
Mutunga, you have raised the issue of equalization fund, and I think it's a very emotive issue, even in Parliament, where we have debated it extensively. This issue is just based on perception. Actually, equalization fund is just perception. I'll give you an example. Our colleagues have been crying about equalization fund, and they think coming from a dry area is you are marginalized. I have got 178 secondary schools and primary schools. And if you go to Lamu or another area which is perceived to be marginalized, they have got less than 100 schools. Yet we are getting the same resources when it comes to issues of CDF. I'll give you an example here in Nairobi. An MP will only have 10 schools. And we are, other areas we have got over 200 other constituencies. Yet we are getting the same resources. Equalization should actually factor many things. Equalization is not where you come from, actually. It is what do you have that needs to be developed by the government money. But now, when it comes to issues of distributing this money, you take it to the people who are rearing livestock. These guys are even richer than people who live in Nairobi. Yeah. I'm telling you, we have a very serious emotive issue we need to balance when it comes to distributing our revenue to our people.
You have asked a question, a very fundamental question. Why is it that he is equal to me? He has 178 schools. I have 143, 139 schools, and so on. Somebody has 5 or 10, but then you get the same amount of money. Same amount of money for bursary, same amount of money for development of these schools, and so on and so forth. It was still the same disagreement. People could not agree on the formula.
Yes.
So we say, okay, let it be equal and forget about the business
which
of
is
sharing.
not fair. Which is not fair.
Share.
Look at, I have a colleague of mine who is from actually in Garissa.
Why is it not fair?
Duale is my colleague in Parliament, and recently he told me the maximum amount of allocation of bursaries he gets only like 2,000 students. Yeah. When myself, 2,000 students share in 45 million bursary allocation. When in my constituency I'm juggling with 18,000 students. Are we really being fair? Sharing the same amount.
Aren't we going back to the population versus region debate?
The issue of bursary, the issue of bursaries and many other things we are talking about here should be factored in equalization fund. The issues of how many roads do you have in the counties, in specific counties, should be factored. The issue of population as well should be factored. But most of the time, a county like Kirinyaga, which is equal to my constituents, 3,000 square feet, 3,000 square kilometer actually. Is it kilometer or meters? It is getting revenue from CDF, it is getting revenue to the counties. So you are developing an area which is equal to my constituency with billions of shillings, when my constituency is actually getting nothing.
That's really
yes,
a paradox.
we
that's
need to consider all these aspects when it comes to
so it's a complex issue that we are not supposed to be linear in how we make this decision.
The reason is that most of this sharing is not informed by statistics. It's not informed by data that we have. It's not informed by science. We keep science aside, and then we come with feelings. So we use feelings to share resources. Resources are scientific. Feelings are not scientific in any way. So it can't work. We need to be informed by our institutions, like institutions which do public policy review, and tell us, in this area, you need so much to develop an individual. In this area, you need so much. So that is tabled in Parliament. People discuss it objectively. And then they agree, okay, when you have so many units to develop, then you should be given so much money.
I am actually so against this issue of population, because census are always doctored anywhere. Like, you find there are people who are inhabiting Kitui County, and that census time, that day, particular day we are doing census, you will find them in Nairobi. You end up actually miscalculating these things. So many people live in Nairobi, actually, they don't, they are not the actual, the original owners of Nairobi, and you end up miscalculating these things. We need to consider many aspects.
All right, gentlemen, allow me move this conversation forward. I know we can go on and on talking about the funds and the devolution, but I want us to just look at something else that really stands out in terms of our hits and misses in the Constitution, and this is Chapter 4, the Bill of Rights, Article 27, that touches on equality and freedom from discrimination. I believe you already know where I'm going with this. Section 3, women and men have the right to equal treatment, including the right to equal opportunities in political, economic, cultural, and social spheres. We have tried as a country. Yes, I agree, and you do not need to remind me that we have created special seats for women across the 47 counties, nomination of 16 women by political parties, and 1 woman representing the youth and persons with disabilities. That is the affirmative action seats. But still, there was need for more to be done to ensure that we have achieved the 2/3 gender rule. As we speak today, and as we mark 10 years since we promulgated the Constitution of Kenya 2010, have we delivered that promise?
Let me say that equality is not only achieved through National Assembly or Senate. Equality is achieved through other things. Issues to do with women empowerment. We have given them affirmative funds, which is actually Wezo Fund, which is not given to men. We have created 47 seats in the National Assembly. And also, we have factored in many other things like in gender and social services. So, when it comes to issues of equality, let us not look only at the parliamentary representation. We need to balance these issues in the ministries. How many workforce do we have for men in the Ministry of Land, in the Ministry of Energy, in the Ministry of those kind of things? And also,
so have we achieved that? If
I think based on what we have seen, we have achieved the issue of gender equality completely. Let us not look only. Let us look Let us look not only the parliament itself,
we have gotten
but
your
other
point
institutions.
of view.
Well, I would like to say that to a large extent, yes. The only area that we've not been able to achieve the gender rule is in elective positions. It's only in politics, the polity, and polity cannot be controlled. Because if it's democracy, then we have to practice democracy based on the principles of democracy. This is a patrilineal state. In a patrilineal situation, you realize that the socio-cultural issues impede bring in issues of discrimination. The way people look at man, woman, influences a lot on whom they would like to see in their leadership. But I would also like to say that exposure plays a great role. Because if you look at some of the women who have been naturally elected in their areas, their constituencies, and even in their counties, they have had some pre-exposure to the people. And then the people see these people, oh, this person can actually deliver. Let's try this lady. And they are coming back. So we are looking at a situation where, far into the future, we may be talking the other way around and saying that now we need to prepare the man to be able to have enough men. So
really,
it's
can
a
the
situation
tables
that can
turn
actually change.
in this patriarchal
the tables
society?
Can turn based on how the effectiveness of the leader now, the extent to which they deliver, the extent to which they confront issues, and also the perceptions of the people. The perceptions of the people can change over time depending on how they rate the different gender in terms of
All
leadership.
right, we will probe that issue in a bit, but I want us now to go back to the coastal region. And I told you about an event we are following up for you. The Kenya Ports Authority today acquired terminal tractors through open tender. This is going to go a long way in so many ways, which include supply of the terminal, which include the expansion of the port, business growth, and replacement of decommissioned terminal tractors. We want to understand more about how important this step is for the Kenya Ports Authority. And now joining us live is Junei Karisa, our coastal region reporter. She will be having an interview with Rashid Salim, the MD of KPA, just to give us a clear perspective of what this whole means for the authority. Junei, it's over to you.
Thank you, Serfine. As you have rightly put it, we're the Kenya Ports Authority, a second container terminal, where today 30 terminal tractors are being launched. And joining me is the acting managing director, who's going to speak to us how this, of course, these tractors will add value to the authority. And of course, during this COVID pandemic period, how is the port operating? Is it operating in low capacity, or are they increasing more more staff or more capacity so that they can be able to meet their targets. So let me just start with you. Karibu sana, Bwana Rashid. So tell us today why we are here and what exactly these tractors will do for the Kenya Ports Authority.
Okay. Thank you, madam. These are 30 terminal tractors valued at 278.4 million. They were built within 6 months. They actually aid in transferring the containers from one area to another. For the example, when the ship comes in, it lifts the containers from the ship and puts it onto the back of TTs. Normally now what we have is just the head, but normally the skeletal trailer where the container is actually loaded. And it's loaded, then it's transferred to different stacking areas, container areas that we have in the port for onward movement to SGR, or waiting for transshipment and keep them there for another ship to come in and actually pick up these containers and go wherever they want to go. So they're an important part of actually building our capacity, building our holding capacity. We'll have 132 TTs now, so that will help us in maintaining them when the schedule comes, and expansion, because expanding the other berth. We have the 22nd berth Mombasa Port Development Project that will be holding 450,000 TEUs. So these are the equipment that we're going to transfer to the other yard. As we're spreading out, we have to also spread the equipment to be able to do the jobs properly.
So currently, how is the port holding up in the wake of this pandemic?
Yeah, so far we've been lucky to a certain extent. Our cargoes, the bulk cargo, the brick bulk, the conventional cargo, the clinker, the coils, the wheat has been coming in quite frequently. But we've had issues with steel and some other factory-built items, because it's the same as here, the other countries. They've actually shut down, so there's less production on the other side, so less is coming in here. We did suffer during, to a certain extent, went to 7.1% drop, but we're picking up now as everybody's actually coming to grips with this pandemic. We had to send also some of our people home. That affected a few sections. There are delays here and there, but it's actually at the end of the day is to ensure that the health of your worker is on top. Is one of our priorities. We don't have a healthy worker, you don't have a healthy force at the end of the day. We won't be able to deliver. So now we're coming back, and we've taken certain mitigation measures, and this is the only port that allows ships to sign off their crew. So we've signed off quite a few crew here. So we're starting to come up as we go along, yeah.
What's your target, if you can put it with all these changes that you are mentioning? You also mentioned some expansion plans inside this port. What is your target to operate?
We'll have a yard capacity once this is done at 2.1 million containers we can keep. We're done 1.4 the last financial. Our target is 1.6, but we've, as I said, due to the pandemic, we've actually our volumes have gone down, but hopefully it will pick up on a later stage. But at the end of the day, we have a business plan. We have certain key KPIs to ensure that we actually get those figures right, and this is what we're working with: the training, and the new equipment and the modernization. We're expanding the roads, we're expanding the yard capacity, we're expanding our oil facilities, We have a cruise terminal as well, and hopefully this will pick up once the pandemic is done. And we have and at the moment we are automating our billing facilities. So it's easier for us. You don't have to come here with your papers and actually do it manually because of the pandemic. You're doing it automatically. It will be faster, it will be accountable, and we'll know where our chance of investment is going to.
Finally, over 100 people have been infected by the coronavirus here, the COVID-19 virus. Going forward, how are you making sure that your staff are okay, and which measures have you put in place across the whole cooperation to ensure that you guys are okay?
Yeah, we're okay. I'm wearing a mask and you're not. No, it's okay. We ensure that we have all the mitigation measures, all the PPEs. Our pilots coming in, that's the first contact with the ships, actually gloved properly and masks. And we have most of our employees have PPEs. We've actually done a COVID-19 committee that is headed by my engineer here, Engineer Tai here, who's the chairman of that committee, and actually he ensures that all the safety measure mitigation factors are taken: washing, sanitizers, face masks. At the clinic, we ensure that they have the azimuth PPEs whenever they can. And we had sent some people home, 58 with pre-medical conditions, home at that time because they are most vulnerable to get this disease. So we brought awareness through the radio stations, the local radio stations, the papers, you know, and we have a public address system that was actually after half an hour it comes on and it reminds us all the mitigation factors for the COVID-19. And unfortunately, as I said, we lost one of our people because her mother died of that. And we like to send condolences to the family of Kajembe because it's really had a hard time. But it's all because of COVID. So COVID is real at the end of the day. We just have to, you know, we have to make sure that we protect ourselves and stay safe all the time. Thank you. Thank you.
Right, Serfine, that was the acting managing director of the Kenya Ports Authority, and today, of course, they have launched 30 terminal tractors here at the second container terminals. These tractors will be used here, and of course, they'll be spread out throughout the ports here across the country. Right, we are headed to Likoni. Former Likoni Member of Parliament, Mwahima, passed away last night due to asthma conditions, so we are heading there. The burial will take place at 1 p.m. as per the Muslims' customs. So we'll be headed there, and of course several leaders will be gathered there to pay their final respects. So we'll be headed there, and of course we'll give you more updates as the time goes by. But for now, Serfine, Achieng, I hand it back to you in studio.
Right. All right, June Karisa, thank you so much for that update. She was speaking to the acting managing director, Kenya Ports Authority, Rashid Salim. Today, they have received 30 terminal tractors, and they were just talking about how this is going to be a game changer at the authority. Of course, we'll be getting clearer details in our subsequent news bulletins at 1, and of course later on in the day. We want now to take you back to the third leadership retreat happening at the Ole Sereni Hotel right here in Nairobi. Currently speaking is Honorable Justin Muturi, the Speaker of the National Assembly. Let's just listen into what he has to say.
Made by members of parliament. So it's just for information and to say that we are ready. And we're already working on some parameters about how we are going to engage with the SRC and their process this time. Because it looks like the other time that we were not well represented or well prepared. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I was meant to talk about the issue of COVID-19 pandemic. I think there's no need for me to talk about it. The Honorable Deputy Speaker, the Clerk, the Honorable Kimunya, the Honorable John Bandi have all spoken to the various measures that we have taken. And I think in the interest of time, I need not to repeat. But just to point out that, of course, we've been having challenges with requests for committees, by committees to sit. But also thank members that when we adopted the new method of doing business, even though challenging, we have not had any hitches. And I think at this point I really would want to applaud the clerk and the staff for having risen to the occasion and provided us with what we needed most. I'd also wish to thank the Procedure and House Rules Committee. And here I see my friend, the Honorable T.J. Kajwang. Yeah, I was suspicious that mask looked like it is covering your face, because the Procedure and House Rules Committee did rise to the occasion and come up with proposals which enabled us to continue seamlessly with the business of Parliament, even though in the new normal. Of course, we've had some challenges under these circumstances, not least, of course, the one that the Honorable Amos Kimunya has talked about, because there's a constitutional requirement that, especially in Article 118, that when we conduct our business, whether in plenary or in committees, we must be open to the public. We must not shut out the media unless in exceptional circumstances. But if you read the Constitution, it says that those circumstances must be clear and there must be permission from the Speaker. So it is just to challenge ourselves as to find that we allow the media to access our proceedings, even if they are virtual. We could even allow live streaming of proceedings, because notwithstanding the pandemic, if a challenge were to arise as to whether we actually observe the provisions of Article 118, and turns out that we did not, we may very well find that the end product of our process could very well be declared to have been unconstitutional to the extent that we excluded the media and thereby the public. Of course, to address these challenges, we have also to, whether we like it or not, adopt to technology. Indeed, my challenge here is to our ICT department within Parliament, and I'm happy that the Director General, Mr. Nyandiere, is here, because now moving forward, most of our businesses will largely be ICT driven. And it's good to acknowledge that fact. And without blowing our trumpet, and it's a matter that we have had some discussions, including as listened to us yesterday, it is a fact that the National Assembly considers about 99.5% of all national government legislation. Indeed, other than the Division of Revenue.
All right, that is Honorable Justin Muturi, the Speaker of the National Assembly, currently speaking at the third Leadership Forum happening at Ole Sereni Hotel right here in Nairobi, going to go a long way in informing quite a number of issues, including how to, just run the country and shape the political landscape in the country during this particular time. It's a forum that is going to take place for the next today and tomorrow. And they are going to be looking at how elected officials in a political environment are to be led, and among others, also discuss how business is to continue during this COVID-19 period. I'm just skimming through the program to see some of the issues that are shaping this particular forum of leaders that has brought together quite a number of leaders, and the convening committee being led there by the Speaker Justin Muturi, the Deputy Speaker Moses Cheboy, the Leader of Majority and the Leader of Minority, together with the Vice Chairperson of the Parliamentary Service Commission and the Clerk of the National Assembly. We'll be getting a clearer perspective on some of the issues that are coming forth as we progress in the course of the day. Now, I want us to climax this particular conversation we've been having in studio. It's just a few minutes to 12 noon. This is when we pave way for the Swahili program. And I want us to talk about, pick from what we were sharing earlier, gentlemen. This touches on the 2/3 gender rule. Before we let that conversation go and focus on other issues, there was this conversation that was picking up in terms of, yes, we've done the much we can as a country to achieve the 2/3 gender rule, but the ball is now on the court of the women themselves. That seems to be the argument that both of you gentlemen are sharing this particular morning. I want you to shed more light on that. How is it so that it's the women now to take the mantle and address this particular issue going forward?
If you ask the elected lady members of parliament whether affirmative action should continue, there should be provision for seats that people have not struggled for, they'll tell you no. If you talk to the women voters down there in the villages, wherever, they'll tell you, let people compete, let people look for the votes. If you look at other countries, I think Kenya has done a lot in terms of affirmative action to try and balance out this equation. And I think, in my very considered opinion, it should be left out of elected positions, and then we leave that balancing act to be in the appointment and recruitment into other positions, that which do not necessarily need people to decide. But where people have to decide, everybody, I mean, the greater majority of the people are of the opinion that women should actually go for it. And as I told you, those who have already been exposed to political processes end up being elected competitively, and they have no problem.
Every woman who is aspiring to be a leader in this country would want to go for it, like you say. Yes. But to be fair, have we leveled the playing ground in terms of giving these women an equal opportunity for them to also vie and to be at par with their male colleagues? Because many women who've been candidates before would say it's very tough and it's very hard for you to just get out there and say that you want to vie for this political position. The things you go through in the campaign season are not even something that a majority of women would want to be part of.
I would like to say that it is tough for everyone.
Not just women?
Not just for women. It is not easy for anyone. It is tough for everyone. And honestly, we have more ladies voters than men. What we need is conviction at the voter level, why the woman will be a better representative than the man. Mm-hmm. We need to look at politics in terms of structuring out development and not necessarily having positions and benefits from the positions. If you have to look at conceptualizing development, the women of this country have been exposed to as much as the men have been. We've gone through the same schooling system. We have seen ladies beat men, hands up in some of the examinations. So election is just one of the activities that they need to style up. Right. And I'm sure they can do it. Honestly, I think they can do it.
Don't we have this gender inequality issue? Women being left behind, women not being part of the decision-making table. Is it a valid conversation? Is it an agenda from where you sit?
I still maintain my position, and I still want to correct Mother Karua and other women who are actually fighting for gender equality. To me, as far as gender equality is concerned, we have achieved it as a nation. And this one should not be based on in parliamentarian seats and other Senate seats. If you look at, for example, why are women saying that it is very tough to compete for parliamentary seat? Yet, majority of the voters in this country are women. 54% of the population is comprised of women. 46 is men. So I think as far as I'm concerned, this topic should even not emanate anywhere. We have done enough affirmative actions to ensure gender equality. Even these seats for women rep, I think they should be devolved to the Senate, because women reps are just represented counties. I don't understand why they are in National Assembly. They are supposed to be in Senate. And when it comes to these issues again, if you look at all the ministries, I have done personal visits to many ministries in this country. You will find the majority of the people who are working there are women. To me, I believe we have got gender equality.
So we have delivered the promise 10 years down the line.
Yes.
That is according to you gentlemen. As we wrap up, there was this point of concern that was raised, and I'd just like us to wind up with this. How we have managed COVID-19. It is a pandemic that has really affected us in so many ways, including bringing the economy into a paralysis. The government has tried to do the much it can to cushion vulnerable Kenyans through several programs, through several initiatives. I'd like to get your perspective on whether you feel, what you feel about some of these efforts and some of these initiatives. Let me start with you, Mheshimiwa.
Let me say that I'm very disappointed by the way the funds have been managed. We have been agitating for the report on how the funds have been managed. I will go to an example. You know, every time we ask a question, we have to go back to the constituents where you come from. I would like to see one single thing that the Minister of Health has done in Mwingi West.
Currently, there's the Kazi Mtaani program that is being rolled out nationwide.
Apart from the CDF money I used to distribute washing tanks and mask, and even the county came with a mask, there is no single other thing the Ministry of Health has done as a at national level. So far, we don't even know the benefits of that money to most of the Kenyans. Counties are supposed to have testing facilities. Every county must have a testing facility. If you contract a COVID-19 virus in Mwingi, your samples have to be brought to Nairobi for testing. Why can't we test it in Kitui or even at the sub-county levels? Do we have to wait for results for 1 week? I'll give you an example. I had a funeral which was suspected, the victim was suspected to have contracted the COVID-19 the virus. And we had to inconvenience the family by planning the funeral 1 week after. And this is the testing should have been carried out at the sub-county levels, in my case at Mingwani. And the national government, actually, this money has not been felt at the grassroots. And we are demanding, not even actually requesting, we are demanding proper publication of what the money has done. From the mask, how many have we produced and how many have we given to all Kenyans? How many PPEs have we bought for Kenyans and where are they going to? Me, I'm challenging the CS himself to tell me one thing indeed in Mwingi West to prevent the COVID-19
spread. I don't know whether what's your input in this. He raises his point is how the funds that were allocated to manage COVID-19 have been spent. For you, what is your biggest concern in how we manage this pandemic as a country?
The way we manage the pandemic, I would like to say that we've not been very careful as a country. We've not been very thorough in our planning and execution. And the issue in question right now, where we have some money having been misappropriated, I think there was a procurement which was placed without the money. And then the ministry or KEMSA had to use money from the donors to try and pay for this particular procurement, when Treasury said no more money for you. So you see, that is in a situation where you're procuring, you don't send out LPO for products that you do not have money for. That was a procedure of law in the first place. And then we also have not been very keen, even in our reporting, the ministry is reporting, on the extent of the preparedness at the county level or at the action level where, you know, COVID-19 could be managed. Because COVID-19 now is spread across the country, and we normally talk about the numbers every day. Even the formula for getting those numbers is not very clear to everyone to know that really that data is generalizable. We cannot be sure that you can say this is the situation in Kenya now. It could be the situation based on the hotspot, the pockets that have been focused on. Having said that, I think everybody should be accountable for their own sins. If anybody has used COVID as a means to make money, I think they should be held responsible. Because if you look at the implementation of course, which we are discussing today, chapter 6 is one of the most, on leadership and integrity, is one of the most flouted in this country. None of these institutions have really given us clear results to show that, you know, we are able to combat corruption, as it were.
Is there anything positive?
There's a lot of hot air about corruption, but the actions, we're seeing somebody followed all the way to a point of imprisonment or, you know, conviction. We haven't seen that.
Actually, you've asked if there's anything positive we have managed.
Because it's been almost several months down the line since we reported the first case. Every day we see a report on
the numbers.
The numbers.
How those numbers are, you know, you are told.
Is there anything
out of
positive we've done as a country, really?
I don't know. What about what lessons have we learned from what we are getting? Because they keep on telling us the curve has not flattened yet. But the numbers have come down. Have they been managed to come down, or is it reality? And this reality, is it scientific? How has it been? You see, those are the kind of things you should be telling Kenyans. We picked data from here. This is the formula we used. We believe this information reflects the situation in Kenya.
On the ground.
I like the aspect of giving Kenyans information every day. I think that one we have scored very high. If you look at when it started, every time we have got a ministerial announcement or presidential announcement on the status and the states of the COVID-19. I think when it comes to issues of management, sharing information, we have done it perfectly as a country. But most of the Kenyans are skeptical about that information. And I've come a lot across with many people saying, is COVID-19 really real?
Until people are still asking that question, even today. All right.
Yes.
We've run out of time for this conversation, unfortunately. I know we can go on and on. There are so many issues to talk about. In fact, we could not even just talk about all that we wanted to talk about.
You mentioned about Kazimita.
Yeah, I want us to wind up. I'll give you a chance each to just give us your final thoughts. You can include Kazim Mtaani in that as we bring this conversation to a close. I'll start with you, Mheshimiwa John.
Thank you very much. My final thoughts. Number one, I think as a country, we need to be a lot more serious than we are right now in managing situations and in managing resources. Secondly, when it comes to implementation of government decisions, the policy decisions, like the policy decision on Kazim Mtaani, we needed to have used data that we have other than going to ask questions to people who were not properly guided on what kind of answers they should have given. We went to provincial to Interior Ministry, picked the administrators, DCCs, ACCs, assistant chiefs and chiefs, and then asked them whether they have slums. The connotation of slum to many people is very wrong. So they will just defend themselves. We have no slum. And that blocked out the youths from our regions from getting money for Kazim Mtaani. We should have phrased this better or used the data at the Central Bureau of Statistics from the last year's housing and population census. We know who are the poor people. We know who owns a chicken, who owns nothing. We know who owns what in this country. Why didn't you use such information instead of going to ask them every time?
So
it's
what
like when we were supposed to do this money transfer.
Have been left out?
Most of the regions have been left. For instance, my constituency, Tikanya West, we have so many people who are poor, so many youths who are just languishing in poverty, who could have benefited from this money, and they can't qualify because the administrators said they have no slums. What a question. You know, when you want to get the correct information, you ask the correct question. But when you ask people if you have a slum, they have to figure out what a slum is. And what they know is maybe Kibera is a slum, there's nothing like Kibera, nothing like probably, you know, Madara in my place, so I have no slum. So we blocked out the youths. using that particular formula. Secondly, they never used the members of parliament because we know our people. We would have clearly said our people are poor. This is a provision for this country, from this government, to support our people, and we would like our youth included, other than excluded.
All right.
Actually, this fund should have been named. Correct naming of this fund should be Kazi Mitahani Stroke Ushango. That is the reality. I support the fund, but I'm finding it very discriminatory. Like Kitui County, only 2 constituencies benefited.
So the rural areas are left out.
Yes, only Kitui Central and Mwingi Central. And when you ask people, they just telling you, this program is only for urban and major towns. It is unconstitutional and discriminatory.
All right.
To me, it should be Kazi Mitahani Stroke Ushango.
What a way to end the program. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for creating time for us this morning. Honorable John Mutunga, Member of Parliament, Tigania West. Honorable Charles Nguna, he's the MP for Mwingi West constituency. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time. And now we want to wrap up and pave way for the Swahili version of the program. But before Nancy Okware takes you through that, we just take you back to the third leadership forum that is taking place at Ole Sereni Hotel right here in Nairobi. And as you continue listening into Honorable Justin Muturi, the Speaker of the National Assembly. My name is Serfine Achieng Ouma, and our sign language interpreter has been Simon Karotha. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.
The Honorable Kimunya did dedicate that perhaps it may be desirable that you also comment on this. And he did. The Honorable, and your friend sitting next to you, the Honorable Muturi Kigano, you know, there have been suggestions, there have been actually court decisions suggesting that you need Parliament should enact legislation to provide for procurement of electoral materials. So perhaps as we come closer to the end of the 12th Parliament, but before it becomes difficult for members to concentrate, and you are left with the Honorable Otiende Amolo burning the midnight oil, just the two of you, perhaps you should begin considering this, addressing whatever it may be, the shortfalls that may be there in the Elections Act 2011, the IEBC Act 2011, and any other facilitative roles as we head towards the end of the 12th Parliament. Just to urge ourselves that we should not be indeed worried about the fact that the 12th Parliament may come to an end and that there could be some impending retirement of some of the players. But please, in good time, try to address that. And also, if you look at my communication after the failed Punguza Mizigo initiative, we noted a number of deficiencies in the way the process is carried out. I know there is, of course, the 2 referendum laws, in addition to what the Honorable Kimunya spoke about, the mediation law, but also those deficiencies on how the process is carried out, the thresholds in county assemblies. What do county assemblies who have passed those bills, what do they communicate to the speakers of parliament? All those issues that we raised in the communication relating to that, I think it would be important that Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, as reconstituent, takes up and finds what it is that we can do to address problems, because either a process started under 256 or 257 can very easily end up in a referendum, and I think it will be important that we prepare ourselves. And where things are would go to the county assemblies, what those thresholds required, and how long can a county assembly, because even now, there are some assemblies who have never submitted their consideration of the Punguza Mizigo or Muzigo bill or initiative. So they are still sitting on them. The assumption is that according to them, maybe if they sit on it, then it fails. Maybe we need to make it clear that you are not given a bill to go and sit on in the village, and then because you think you are a gatekeeper. Even if you are to be a gatekeeper, there must be a mechanism that once you receive it within a specified period, you must express yourself one way or other. Otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, let me take my seat while declaring officially this third National Assembly Leadership Retreat officially opened. And I hope that, honorable members, since we began 2 hours late, we then should be ready to sit 2 hours after the proposed closure of business today. Thank you very much. I'll be sitting with you, don't worry. In as much as that you punished me for telling me to come at 8, only to come to begin past 10. But I will sit with you because I consider this very important so that we can have a free exchange of ideas on some of the challenges that we may have noticed for those that are continuing, and what new ideas there may be for those that have assumed new leadership roles. Thank you very much. Then?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the moving speech you've given us and the leadership who have spoken. To be fair to the father of the house, Honorable Ngwenyi, we will be proposing we adjourn for 10 minutes. We have a cup of tea we can also bring in. We are requesting the participants to maintain social distance even out there. And also members who have not registered, please register your attendance, and my officers are also there with forms, facilitation forms, so that you can sign. And then, Speaker, maybe for information, because the matter has been raised, I should have introduced the Directorate of Litigation, officers who go to court on behalf of the National Assembly. There's one directorate, but we have officers dedicated to the National Assembly and the one to the Senate, because what we call a client advocate confidentiality. So I have Mr. Sheriff Sam Mwendwa. Mr. Mwendwa is a Deputy Director Litigation and Compliance. Before he joined us in Parliament, he was a senior resident magistrate in Machakos. He was a sheriff in Machakos town, actually. And a company is Sophie Otieno, the legal officer as well. Speaker, we have had 189 cases. 189 cases that we are in court, mainly on mandate, issues of taxation and all that. Members of the public have been going to court. We've won 70 of them. Others are under appeal. But what has come out, Speaker, for members to know is that there are certain rulings, landmark rulings that have been made. One, that Parliament National Assembly has powers to tax. People have gone to court and say you shouldn't tax. Under 221 and others, you have powers to tax. Two, you can now make amendments in the committee stage. You know, there was a previous ruling that if you have to make amendments, you have to go back to public participation. A ruling has now been made that you can actually review a bill and make amendments on the committee of during the committee of the whole house, which is very crucial because the argument about that. Thirdly, it was the case of the speaker, election of the speaker. The court ruled that you cannot go to court before you exhaust the parliamentary processes, the standing orders, the rules that have been provided. And the petitioner did not exhaust at all. Going along with that was a matter of powers and privileges, that members of parliament, their issues touching on their conduct can only be handled by powers and privileges committee, because that is a mechanism provided for. We have had cases where some bodies are trying to ask us to ask members to appear before them. We say no until powers and privileges are done. So there are certain grounds that have been done, and we are happy. We are building up. Out of these cases,